So now we have this, then the next thing is the span, because we'll go into span charts after this. And if we look on the right-hand side here on our blueprints, there's a dimension here, 14'9" from the outside edge of the wall to the inside face of this bearing wall. So we've got 14'9". So I'm going to just write it on my drawing here, 14'9". And the bearing wall is 5.5 inches thick, which means it's a 2x6 wall. We'll add those together. That gives us 14 feet, 14.5 inches, which is the same thing as 15 feet, 2.5 inches. So this dimension is what's called an out-to-out dimension, from the outside of the exterior wall to the outside of this wall. And so it does include the bearing. That's an out-to-out dimension. But let's take a look here. Is that the worst case? What we're looking for is whichever joist works for the longest span will obviously work for any other span in here. This is pretty short, that's short. So is that, it looks like this one might be. So let's take a look and just confirm it. And this one is 13 foot 10 inches inside a bearing to inside a bearing. And that dimension, by the way, because it's going face to face a bearing, is called a clear span dimension. But we're going to go ahead and add our bearing on each end of it so we can compare it to our other one. We've got 5.5 and 5.5, that's 11 inches. Add those two together, 14 feet, 9 inches, I believe. So it looks like this is in fact our longest span, this farthest right piece here. And this is what we need to go into our span charts with. So let's take a look at them. The first one we're going to look at here is for the conventional floor joist. Now this particular plan was drawn in the south, and we're going to make the assumption that it's southern pine. And in fact, here it is, the floor joists, S pine, which stands for southern pine, 16 inches on center, which is the typical spacing for a floor joist of regular lumber. And we're going to come across here to a 2x10, which is the most common. That spans 16 feet 1 inches, and that's more than 15 2.5. So I'm going to write this down here now as one of our options. So option number 1 is a 2x10 southern pine SP. Okay? And these particular charts, by the way, are based off of the code, which is not written in this particular section here, but just so you know, it's based off what's called L/360. That's the deflection criteria. That's the span divided by 360. Okay, and that's just basic code right there. We'll set that aside. Then we'll look at Framer series. And if we were to keep a similar type of joist, there's a 2x10. And there's two different choices here that we can use. There's 40 PSF live load, 10 PSF dead load. Those are the same, but look at this. There's a L divided by 360. That's the code conversion, but there's one that's slightly better called L/480. This is a stiffer floor to go to this criteria. And let's see if it works here. So if we take the 2x10 that's 6 inches on center, it spans 14.9. So you would think that that 14.9 being less than 15 2.5 wouldn't work. However, what's happening here is, remember, we use this as an outside dimension. And if you look at your notes, these spans are based on clear distances between supports. So if we were to subtract off 5.5 inches for my support here and the thickness of the foundation wall here, we'll be less than 14.9. So in fact, Framer series will work. So I'm going to put this down here as a 2x10 FSL, Framer series lumber, and it actually works at a slightly better criteria. Last, we're going to take a look at the TGI alternates, and sort of the first obvious thing here is there's two charts here, one that's 480, one that's 360. We've already looked at the minimum criteria, so we're going to go up to this chart here and stick with this one for the moment. The 9.5 inch 110 at 16 inches on center, again 40 PSF live load, 10 PSF dead load. Those are conventional numbers that are used in all span charts for floors. Works, so we can span a little bit farther than the Framer series even at 16 inches on center. Now we're going to have a 9.5 inch TJI 110, also Elver 480, and also it's 16 inches on center. So we've got 3 16-inch on center options. But there may be some others that may make sense here. Let's take a look at something a little different. We'll look at the 11 7/8 110, and we could actually space that as far as 19.2 inches on center. So we could do that if we wanted to. In fact, we could actually go 24-inch on center spacing. Now the TJI charts, just like the Framer series, are based off of cleared distances. So we are in fact exceeding the clear span, which is under 15.2.5. So I'm just going to throw that out there as an idea that might make sense. Less material, still has a good deflection criteria, and it might make sense. So there we have it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different options, slightly different deflection criteria for each one of them, a couple of different options for spacing too, for that matter. Now, with these, the next question is, of course, which one is the lowest cost, which one costs the most, how much can I afford, and how good is the floor in fact? Because although these all meet this criteria, we don't necessarily know how that floor is going to perform. We have to have some method of looking at these alternates and saying, how can we make a decision?